Ever seen a marriage end like a corporate deal? This one gets colder every minute. Stay with me. If you're into real stories with sharp twists, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. I've seen breakups in boardrooms smoother than this. My name's Thayer Holt. I'm 57, born and raised in Massachusetts. I spent over 3 decades working compliance and forensic reviews for banks and funds, looking for things people didn't want found. The week after Labor Day, they called it a restructuring. What it really meant was I got my badge shut off and a box handed to me by someone from HR who wouldn't make eye contact. That was 5 days ago. Now I'm in the kitchen of our 15th floor condo at Harbor Light Tower, staring at a document my wife, Renee, laid on the counter like she's sliding over a restaurant check. She's in full calm mode, blouse pressed, makeup light, voice flat. "We need a family restructuring," she says, like we're work peers. 50-50. Going forward, each person funds their own life. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from, and let's continue. I don't even respond. I just read the paper. It's formatted like a business operating agreement. Rent, split. Utilities, split. Groceries, shared space expectations. There's even a clause about financial transparency, which she repeats twice like she's proud of it. "You said you wanted clarity," she adds, tapping the pen on the signature line. The same pen I gave her when she made partner, back when we still celebrated each other. I nod once. Calm. Not because I agree. Because I recognize exactly what this is. She thinks this is leverage. She thinks I'll push back, make it ugly. Cry, maybe. I don't. I read it again, top to bottom. Then I pick up the pen and sign. Her eyes flick up, watching for a crack. No crack, no speech, no performance. I sign like I'm reviewing vendor compliance. I sign like I've done this 1,000 times with hedge fund vultures who smiled as they buried the fine print. Because I have. She takes the document back, slides it into a folder like she's filing away a win, then walks off already tapping on her phone. She thinks she's clever. She thinks I'll unravel. Instead, I pull out my phone and take crisp photos of every page. Then I text my sister, Kendra. "You were right. It's happening." I don't add a single extra word. Kendra knows my tone. And just like that, the marriage ends. Not with a scream, not with a slammed door, but with a signature and a file folder. Next move was mine. I opened a new notebook the next morning and labeled it like a case file, not just notes or journal. This was documentation. I used a ruler to draw clean columns, date, item, category, action taken. I wasn't being petty. I was treating it like what it had become. A contract dispute with someone who knew how to weaponize process. First entry, new checking account opened in my name only. I moved the severance and unemployment there, set up email alerts, and printed the confirmation screen. No games, no stealth, just separation. From that point forward, all financial matters went through email, not texts, not in passing while unloading groceries. If it wasn't in writing, it didn't happen. Kitchen talk became logistics only. What time the dog walker came, what day the recycling bins went out, who ordered the next round of Brita filters. Nothing emotional, nothing vague. I read her agreement again, line by line, with a highlighter. The clause about transparency jumped out now like it was bolded. Any transaction over $4,000 tied to shared assets had to be disclosed. Renee had insisted on that. She said it was to keep us both honest. At the time, I nodded. Now I saw it for what it was, a tool. Depending how it got used, it could trap me or trap her. I didn't snoop. I didn't guess passwords or sneak into her office. I gathered what any spouse legally has access to. Tax returns, joint bank and credit statements, HOA notices, investment property records, even the old maintenance receipts still coming to our shared inbox. I created folders for each. Then I backed it all up twice. And I stopped paying for anything that wasn't explicitly mine. No more household blend of expenses. I kept my streaming service and canceled the rest, removed her license plate from the garage billing account, told management to invoice her separately. I even stopped covering the $3 tip I used to leave for the dog walker in cash. She noticed. Fast. One afternoon, she walked into the kitchen and saw a new black lockbox on the second shelf, where I kept my supplements, coffee, and protein powder. She paused. Not angry, just judgmental. "You're really doing this?" she asked, arms crossed like I owed her a briefing. I nodded and said, "It's not personal. It's 50-50. Each person funds their own." She didn't respond right away, just looked at the box like it was beneath her. That weekend, she made a soft pivot. offered to help tune up my resume, said we should be two professionals navigating a transition. She even printed out job listings. I thanked her, placed the papers on the counter, and turned back to my spreadsheet. Column C, payments she stopped making. Column D, assets she assumed I wouldn't track. The second her back was turned, I picked up the folder again and didn't stop for 3 straight weeks. By then, the numbers stopped looking random. Patterns started forming, the way they always do if you stare long enough and don't lie to yourself about what you're seeing. Charges that used to blur together suddenly had rhythm. Same amounts, same timing, same quiet confidence. Kendra showed up one rainy Tuesday night with takeout and zero patience for nonsense. She kicked off her shoes by the door, looked around the apartment like she was inspecting a staged listing, and shook her head. "This place feels fake," she said, setting the bag on the counter. "Like nobody actually lives here. You're just maintaining it." I handed her a plate and said, "Feels about right." She leaned against the island, watching me instead of eating. "You're the unpaid crew, Thayer. She's the one on stage." That landed harder than I expected, but I didn't argue. I didn't need to. I just slid one of the printed statements across to her, covered in notes and highlights. Kendra didn't pretend to understand the details. She just tapped the page and said, "Then stop acting like crew." That same night, after she left, I made the call. Priya Desai answered on the second ring, voice steady, no wasted words. I gave her the short version: job loss, sudden agreement, financial split, and my concern that it wasn't just about fairness. She asked 3 questions, sharp and clean. "Any shared assets?" "Yes." "Any new entities or unknown vendors?" "Possibly." "Are you trying to fix the marriage or protect yourself?" I didn't hesitate. "Protect myself." She didn't react, just said, "Then we treat it like a financial setup." That was it. No sympathy, no speeches, exactly what I needed. From that point on, anything that mattered went through Priya. Everything else stayed in writing, clean lines, no overlap. A day later, she gave me 2 rules. Document everything, and don't take the bait if she tries to frame you. Then she added, "People like your wife don't raise their voice. They build a narrative." That stuck. I could already feel it happening. Small comments, careful tone, positioning me as unstable without ever saying the word directly. That same week, I spotted it. One charge on a joint card we still used for building expenses. Hawthorne Strategy Group, $4,250, then another, and another. Monthly, same amount, going back 7 months. I didn't recognize the name. That alone was a problem. Renee had been talking about cutting waste. This wasn't waste. This was precise. I looked it up through public records. Limited liability company, less than a year old. Registered address wasn't an office. It was a mailbox service down near the seaport. Not proof, but not nothing. I sent it to Priya. She didn't speculate. She just said, "We track it." Then she looped in someone she trusted, Sonia Ito. Sonia didn't do small talk. "Send statements," she said, "not opinions." That worked for me. I printed everything, month by month, labeled, dated, cross-referenced, built a clean evidence folder, stacked and ordered, then I clipped it shut, set it on the table, and started the next batch. Sonia took the next set of files, and I knew it'd be days before I heard anything back. That's when Renee shifted strategies. She walked into the kitchen that Thursday morning, purse on her arm, keys in her hand, and said like she was giving a calendar reminder, "We have a wellness check-in Tuesday at 5. Dr. Mandel, she's someone I know through work, just a preliminary session." She didn't ask. She scheduled it like a haircut. Then she left before I could say a word. I didn't push back. I just forwarded the message to Priya and asked, "How do we play this?" She called me that afternoon. "Assume you're being recorded, even if you're not. Don't react, don't attack. Stay on the record, even emotionally." So I took the simplest step I could without crossing any lines. In Massachusetts, both parties have to consent to audio recording. So I didn't go that route. Instead, I opened my laptop and sent Renee an email. "For clarity, I'd like us to keep written summaries of key decisions made during or after sessions for mutual reference." Sounded dry. That was the point. It made it real, traceable. Tuesday came. I wore a clean button-down, neutral colors. No sarcasm, no anger. Dr. Mandel's office looked like a Pinterest board. Soft chairs, water fountain, a bowl of stress balls. Renee smiled like she was doing community service. From the second we sat down, the focus tilted toward me. The therapist asked about my identity post-employment. I said I was applying for roles and consulting where possible. She asked how I was coping internally. Renee cut in with her concerned voice. "He's been Quiet. Withdrawn. I didn't rise to it. When the therapist said, "It's okay to say you're not coping," I replied, "I'm coping. I'm documenting and applying for work." That changed the room. The therapist blinked. Renee's mouth tightened just slightly. We wrapped up without shouting, without any fireworks. I thanked the doctor for her time and walked calmly to the lobby. That's where Renee struck. She stepped in front of me near the door and said, low and sharp, "You're embarrassing yourself pretending you're fine." I didn't flinch. "If you need something in writing, email me." Then I walked straight past her, out the door, and didn't look back. Not once. No spectacle. No material for her to spin. That night, I worked on my own framework. Not revenge. Just numbers. I opened Excel and started listing every responsibility I'd carried in this marriage. Annual tax filings, insurance policy renewals, her father's medical billing when he got dropped from his PPO, the condo investment admin, contract negotiations, scheduling vendors, coordinating HOA votes. I priced each task at conservative market rates, hourly, year by year. When it was done, I printed it and slid it across the counter while she was finishing her tea. She picked it up with a smirk. "What is this?" "Administrative contribution valuation," I said. She read the first page, then her face changed. "This says over $412,000. "That's right, over 11 years, using your logic." She didn't laugh again. I walked away and left the document right there on the granite. Renee didn't say a word about the valuation sheet. Not that night, not the next morning. She just left it on the counter like it didn't exist. That silence told me more than if she'd screamed. Sonia got back to me 3 days later. She called, straight to it. "Your wife's cleaner than most," she said, "but not clean." I asked her what she meant. She said Hawthorne's strategy group was a pass-through. Money in, money out. Not even trying to look legitimate. The transfers lined up with invoices from Price Meridian Holdings. That name hit me sideways. It wasn't random. That was a brand, a glossy, high-end real estate group with ad spots in luxury design magazines. I didn't jump to conclusions. I tracked receipts. One payment referenced a private club in Back Bay, another, a design showroom specializing in bespoke finishes. Then, while cleaning out the glove box in our shared SUV, I found a valet stub, light blue, folded, tucked in an envelope of old insurance cards. The date was the same night Renee told me she had a late client dinner. The location, a waterfront restaurant in Charlestown, one we'd never been to together. I stared at that receipt a long time, not because it proved anything, because it matched the pattern. Money, lies, and the confident assumption I wouldn't look. I reached out to Tamsin Rowe, an old contact from my risk review days. She now ran tenant services in the downtown tower where Renee's firm leased space. I didn't ask for favors. I asked what she was allowed to say. She didn't dodge. "I can't get you camera footage, but I've seen her leave the building after hours a few times with a man in a navy overcoat, tall, confident, gets treated like he owns the place." Sonia followed the money deeper. Public property filings gave us a name, Dawson Price, 43, real estate developer, premium residential, plenty of press photos, handshakes, ribbon cuttings, charity events. The man had teeth and polish. And now he had a link to my wife. The transfers didn't look like romance. Sonia showed me the records. These weren't flowers and dinners. These were dues, deposits, structured payments. One line item looked like a repayment schedule. I pulled up the paperwork on our investment condo, the unit we'd bought together 8 years back for long-term security. I hadn't looked at the filings in months. Buried in the updated records was a new UCC lien tied to a shell entity I didn't recognize. I brought it to Priya. She looked at it, her mouth tight, and said, "This suggests your wife pledged an interest in the unit as collateral for something." "Not to me," I said. "No," she replied. "This isn't romance. This is leverage." I stood there holding the file, heartbeat steady but jaw locked. This wasn't just betrayal. She was funding something, and if it failed, I was supposed to be the liability on paper. I wasn't going to let that happen, so I turned the page, printed the next batch, and sent it straight to Sonia. The next move came dressed in silk and subtle judgment. Renee sent Brielle Mercer, her closest friend, polished and measured, the kind of woman who never raises her voice but still makes her point land. Brielle walked into our condo like she had an appointment, not a personal visit, and scanned the place like she was confirming inventory. She sat across from me at the kitchen island, legs crossed, blazer still on. "Renee just wants you to be realistic," she said, voice even. I nodded once, like we were already negotiating a buyout. I didn't attack Renee, didn't roll out evidence or show Brielle the folder sitting one drawer away. I offered coffee and asked a simple question. "If your husband lost his job, would your first move be a contract dividing the house?" Brielle didn't answer right away. That pause was everything. "She's scared," she finally said. "No," I replied. "She's calculating." I saw the flicker behind Brielle's eyes, the mental math she was doing. Risk director or not, she had a gut. And that gut had just twitched. She looked around slowly. The new billing folders, the second Wi-Fi network, the way the fridge was split top to bottom like a college dorm. Then she asked, quiet but pointed, "Did she really do all this in under a week?" I nodded. Brielle leaned back like she'd been hit with something familiar. Not new pain, old pain. A pattern she thought she'd left behind. She left that day without making threats or promises. Just said, "Take care of yourself," and closed the door behind her. 2 days later, she called me from her car. The windows were up, voice tight. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said, "but I can't unsee it." She told me what I already suspected. Renee had been laying groundwork at dinners and firm events, framing me as the fragile one. He's not handling the layoff well. He's getting paranoid about money. I'm trying to stay supportive. "She's planting it," Brielle said. "One person at a time, quiet, controlled." She didn't hand me a smoking gun, just what she could reasonably access. First, a forwarded email thread between Renee and her attorney, talking points, phrases like instability post-severance and reputation risk mitigation. Then, a memo from her firm's internal team flagging questions around billing codes tied to Hawthorne's strategy. It wasn't proof of fraud, but it was enough to show something was being tucked in the shadows. Then came the hard piece. Brielle scanned and sent me a side letter. It was signed by Renee. The letter referenced support services and mutual consideration in connection with one of Dawson Price's projects. Vague language, but paired with what Sonia had uncovered, it painted the picture clearly. Renee wasn't just sleeping with him. She'd financially attached herself to his name and platform. "I lived through financial suffocation once," Brielle said, voice steady now. "I swore I'd never help it happen to someone else." That's when I knew the roles had flipped. She wasn't Renee's messenger anymore. She was mine. And she had receipts. Brielle's documents hit the table, and Priya didn't waste a second. We didn't build a case out of rage. We built it out of structure, precise, verified. No emotion in the formatting, no heat in the wording. The notice we sent to Renee's attorney laid it out in plain terms. Breach of the transparency clause in her own agreement. We requested immediate disclosure of any entity tied to Hawthorne Strategy Group and any encumbrance on the investment condo. Simple demands, all grounded in her own language. Then Priya took the gloves off, quietly. She sent preservation letters to Renee's law firm and the condo's management company. They were legally required to retain billing communications and records connected to Hawthorne and anything financial tied to the unit. That move didn't make headlines, but it got attention. Renee's attorney, Caleb Harkness, came in fast and loud over email, the kind of guy who weaponizes passive phrasing. "My client is concerned your client may be exhibiting signs of emotional volatility after recent professional upheaval." Translation: "Let's plant seeds of doubt." Priya didn't even blink. "Our client will not participate in character phishing. Provide financial disclosures as contracted." That shut it down. While they postured, Sonia kept digging. Her second trace revealed the part Renee hadn't expected anyone to see. Hawthorne payments feeding directly into a network of entities Dawson controlled. They weren't structured as gifts. They followed a debt schedule. I asked Priya, "So he wasn't just funding her?" She said, "No, he wasn't funding her. She was funding him. And he expects to get paid." Brielle filled in what I wasn't there to hear. At a small dinner, Renee had pitched Dawson on the idea of a stable strategic partnership. Her words, not mine. Like a business plan wrapped in a relationship. Dawson's answer? "Then prove you're worth backing." That was the game they were playing. Not love, leverage. Priya walked me through our next step. If she feels financial pressure, she may try to move assets or borrow against shared property. We need to stop that before it starts. We filed a motion for temporary financial orders, freezing all major transfers, preventing new debt against the condo, and blocking quiet reshuffling. No theatrics, just protection. The judge granted it. The filings spoke for themselves. The risk was real, and the documentation was airtight. But the moment I didn't expect came 2 days later. Sonia flagged a shift in Dawson's billing pattern. The payments changed labels. What had been listed as club dues or development coordination were now billed as repayment. Same amounts, same timeline, different message. He wasn't funding her, he was collecting. That's when I saw it clearly. Renee hadn't just bet on money and status. She tied herself to a man who saw relationships the same way she did, as lines on a ledger, and now she'd become one. By the time early December rolled around, Renee's firm was buzzing about their big winter fundraiser. Formal attire, historic venue in Beacon Hill, donor tables, the works. It wasn't just a dinner, it was a stage. Every polished sentence and sideways glance had weight. Reputations moved like currency in that room. Spouses were expected, plus ones with the right kind of polish. Renee didn't think I'd show. I knew she'd been setting the stage. Quiet comments about how I'd taken the layoff hard, how I was keeping to myself. She figured I'd stay home, blend into the version of me she'd been selling. Instead, I walked through the double doors in a charcoal gray suit, clean shave, no theatrics, calm face, no drink in hand, just water. If anyone wanted to lie about a scene later, I'd be stone sober. The envelope was tucked in my inside pocket. Not thick, not flashy, just enough to shift the balance. I spotted Warren Bixby, Renee's managing partner, near the silent auction table. Tall, careful, always scanning. He wasn't there for fun. He was there to protect the firm's shield. I walked up and said, "Warren, I need 1 minute, not emotional, just information." He gave me a look that said you'd better be worth it, but he nodded. I laid it out like I used to in board reviews. Internal conflict, undisclosed transfers. Possible reputational spillover tied to Hawthorne's strategy group and a development interest your team should be aware of. I'm not here to explode anything, but if this moves to court, filings become public. That got his attention, and right on cue, Renee spotted us. She walked over with the expression she used on junior associates she planned to cut loose, smooth and tight. "This isn't the place there," she said, trying to take control by tone alone. I looked at her, even and direct. "You made it this place when you used your firm's systems to conceal personal financial transfers." A few people around us turned just slightly, pretending not to listen while leaning in. That's when Dawson Price arrived. Tan coat, confident smile, handshake like a politician. Expensive watch. He was exactly the brand he sold. Renee brought him over like he was her prize, but when Warren saw him, his face changed. Brielle told me later what I missed. Warren asking Dawson quietly but directly, "Do you have any personal financial connection to one of our partners that could expose the firm to conflict?" Dawson didn't fumble. He just stepped back, physically and socially, like he was already writing off the risk. Renee's smile faltered, just enough. The room didn't erupt. It frosted over. No one raised their voice. They didn't have to. In places like that, silence is sharper than shouting. One by one, people started doing what people like that always do, distancing. When Priya and I stepped out into the cold, she said, "That was the sound of doors closing." I looked back through the frosted glass. Renee was standing alone, still trying to look composed, and realizing, for the first time, she couldn't spin her way out. The conference room was beige, silent, and too warm. The kind of place where bad coffee sits in a carafe like it knows it's not going to help. Renee sat across the table from me in full partner posture, shoulders back, expression mild, eyes hard. She looked like a woman settling a vendor dispute, not closing a marriage. Caleb opened with the usual, "My client remains concerned about emotional instability related to Mr. Holt's employment situation." Priya didn't even shift in her seat. She slid a folder across the table, opened it, and said, "Timeline of communications, filings, and financial records. Nothing in this indicates instability. What it shows is clarity." He barely looked at it before pivoting. "We're requesting full confidentiality on all settlement terms." Priya raised an eyebrow. "That's on the table, but only in exchange for full disclosure and structured division. No hidden liabilities, no vague offsets." She let the word structured hang long enough to pull the pressure into the room. We didn't waste time on love, betrayal, or hurt feelings. That part was already scorched earth. We focused on the contract, the one Renee drafted, the clause she insisted on, the terms she claimed were fair. Priya tapped the page. "Your client authored this clause. All transactions over $4,000 tied to marital assets require disclosure. The breach is confirmed and documented." Caleb tried to shift again. "There's no evidence of intent." Priya didn't even blink. "Intent isn't required. The clause doesn't make it conditional." Sonia's report sat between us. The numbers didn't lie. $68,900 in concealed outflow connected to Dawson's business network, plus the real problem, the UCC filing on our investment condo that proved Renee had used marital equity to collateralize something I didn't sign off on. Priya closed the folder. We settle now with a clean asset, unwind, and documented division, or we proceed to litigation and subpoena. The result will involve your client's firm. She didn't say Warren's name. She didn't need to. We broke for 5 minutes. In the hallway, Renee approached me, shoulders down, voice soft. We don't have to ruin each other, Thayer. I looked her dead in the eye. You started this as a control move. I'm ending it as a boundary. No heat, just finality. We returned, signed where we needed to. I kept my half of the condo equity. The lien was unwound by legal pressure. My documented contributions were paid out in structured terms. Retirement assets got split by actual math, not legal fog. Renee signed like it was a merger she regretted. I signed like I was closing a case file. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. Not triumph, not relief, just safety. After everything was signed, I moved across the river to a 1-bedroom in East Cambridge. Clean lines, morning light, no invisible tape splitting the cabinets, no one tapping a pen at a counter waiting for my surrender. I picked up contract work again, compliance audits for mid-size firms, cleanup reviews, internal checks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. I did the work. I got paid. The layoff stopped being a whispered shame story and turned into what it always was, just business, not a character flaw. On the side, I built something practical, not a blog, not a podcast, just a simple site called Clear Ledger, a place where people could learn how to spot financial manipulation inside a relationship, hidden pass-through vendors, split living contracts disguised as fairness, little narrative traps like you're unstable and I'm just being responsible. I didn't sell drama, I sold clarity. Kendra said, "You turned your worst month into a toolkit." And she wasn't wrong. Guys started reaching out. Quiet, practical men who never thought they'd be the ones getting squeezed. Teachers, project managers, engineers. One of them was a fire marshal. Most of them didn't want therapy. They wanted a spreadsheet that made sense. I showed them how to keep records, how to write boring emails that hold up in court, how to survive being painted as the problem without becoming the weapon they expected. Brielle stayed around longer than I expected. At first it was check-ins. Did you eat? Did that referral get back to you? Then it just turned into time. No pressure, no angle. We'd sit on my couch and watch terrible documentaries while she told me how the hedge fund world was burning from the inside out. She didn't need me to be a provider. She needed me to be honest. I could do that. Renee didn't unravel in one loud moment. She lost altitude in slow, quiet steps. Warren pulled her off high-risk client work. Dawson vanished when Sonia's team made repayment filings public. He didn't fight. He repositioned. Men like him don't stand by mess. They walk away from it with dry shoes. Brielle heard it through the same whisper circuits Renee used to control. She wasn't ruined, but the glow was gone. She was still invited, just no longer central. That hits someone like her harder than losing a title. The last time I saw her, it was months later. Random afternoon, coffee shop near the Common. I was picking up a sandwich. She walked in, glanced past me, then froze. She gave me a small nod, tight, silent, just enough to say this is over. I nodded back and walked out. No speech, no performance. The door closed behind me and the air felt clean. That was the revenge. I didn't break. I built. One last thing. If you've ever had someone turn fair into a weapon, would you sign their rules to keep the peace, or would you start documenting and push back? If you've got the hype feature, tap it to support this video and help it reach more people. Please subscribe and like. It really matters, and it's one click. And drop a comment, even good story, or tell me what you'd do.